Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Great midweek results leaves Arsenal back in the top four where they belong. And with the arrival of Denis Suarez, we have to ask, is the title back on? No. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. No, the title's not back on. But top four is back on. It is so back on that we are in the actual top four on goals scored. Still counts, still good. And with, let me see, it says here, Manchester City away at the weekend, I imagine that we will only further consolidate our position in that illustrious Champions League place. So, we're very excited to talk about that. We're going to start this podcast, though, not talking about Cardiff, but talking about deadline day. We're recording on deadline day as the window is getting ready to slam shut, which is what the window does. And it has been a flurry of activity today. Denis Suarez loan officially announced, and Arsenal also have done nothing. Arsenal have done nothing. We've loaned Denis Suarez. Okay, moving on to Cardiff. No, I'm kidding. We'll talk about that, but we're going to talk about that with our guests who need to be introduced. The first is Scott. You can find him on Twitter at @O_that_crab. Hello, Scott.
Yeah!
And Paul. You can find him on Twitter at PosNoMyPants. Hello, Pos.
Woohoo.
Clive will be back for Patreon content tomorrow, going over the deadline day in depth, the window generally, transfers, the arrival of Denis Suarez, and more. And then Tim has assured us he will be back after the City game. Apparently, he likes a moan, is the only reason I can think. That's why he's making his triumphant return after the City game and then back on a long-term contract after that. So his winter break coming to an end. In any event, let's get to the big news first, though, Paul. You have wanted Suarez from the beginning. You got your wish, a loan move. And look, I will point out, I don't think anyone else in the top six have made any permanent signings that I can think of. Mostly loan moves, not a lot of big activity, kind of a dud of a transfer window, January window. In stark contrast to last season, which maybe kind of set our expectations a little high, we started dreaming of Ousmane Dembele. We ended with Denis Suarez. How do you feel about the acquisition?
He's a big unknown for all the obvious reasons, like not having played for a few years, but he should be nice and fresh. I think the profile makes a lot of sense. I know we wanted a centre back and we wanted a full back, wing back, and we wanted a wide player. And it's clear in this window we were desperately, we locked in Suarez early as primary target, it would seem, and we fairly desperately were looking for an additional wide player, and that's as far as we got. So that's what Emery thinks he needs. I know there was a lot of talk about we have a lot of players in this position. If this position is playing in those kind of that advanced mid half spaces, Iwobi, Mkhitaryan spot, but we don't really. You can list off a bunch of players and probably you could say Iwobi and Mkhitaryan when fit, and he's not. And maybe Ramsey, but he's been used in a number of different positions, can play in that spot. I don't know that too many of them. Maybe Mkhitaryan can really run for 90 minutes. And Unai Emery uses more subs, has used every sub available to him in every game, apparently. So that's 69 or something substitutions he's made. Nice. Yep. And he swaps it around at halftime and pulls out a different config, so you're not even looking for the same players in each half. So this guy's potentially going to get loads of usage, and in probably the busiest spot for the manager. He needs two of those guys per game, and if he subs them and keeps the same configuration, he needs four of them, and we rarely have four fit guys. So I think people have said he's like Iwobi. I think he achieves the same as Iwobi by different means, a different style of player doing the same thing, and he's better going wide and doing cutbacks and that kind of thing from what I've seen, but he's as prolific on the end product, so he'll be another pre-assist merchant. But we got two really good strikers who need feeding, so I'm excited, but we could look back on him in a few months' time and think, oh, that's why he didn't start for Barcelona.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to find out. He was already in training. Scott, I want to read you tweets, because that's what a podcast is for, reading tweets. David Cartledge at David Jacka, I believe he is an editor.
Off.
Wow. How do you really feel about the guy?
I didn't like his tweet.
Oh, yeah,
he bummed me out.
Apparently. Editor at ESPN UK, Spanish football journalist at TalkSport 2, 442, and Talking La Liga. A guy who had some strong opinions on Emery before he arrived. So
he's a hack.
Take it with a grain of salt. So just note, if you ever disagree with Paul, this is what you're in for. Or Paul disagrees with you, I should say. Two things that I thought stood out. First of all, a lot of people playing up the Suarez and Emery links from Sevilla. One thing that David Cartledge said on Twitter is that his time with Sevilla is being overplayed. He was a bit part player that played in various roles, and Unai Emery could never really find his best position, an average loan that lacked any consistency. The other thing that stood out to me about his thread on Suarez is he said, his lack of personality and confidence on the field has held him back. Plays safe, doesn't take risks or look to influence games. He's simply not that player. He won't demand the ball, offer authority. I don't want to shit on a player before he arrives, because that would deny me the opportunity to shit on him after he's arrived, which is more my hashtag brand. So, Scott, why don't you shit on the player before? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We want to stay upbeat. He could be awesome, but do you want to sort of contextualize those comments, and maybe if you've had a chance to look at him statistically or just qualitatively, what your thoughts are on how he's going to play for us?
So I have tried to come around on this one a little bit better than when I was first seeing this one rumored. Looking at his overall La Liga performances, he actually looks like a pretty solid player. You also have to remember he's, still fairly young. So it's not like you're getting a finished product. He's 25, so he's really right at the beginning of the peak years. Although as a wider player, they tend to peak a little bit earlier. So I think we're getting a player at a good age. I think the other thing to remember is that Sevilla time, that was 2014-15. So he was really a young prospect at that time. So it wasn't I don't think you can say that's the be all end all. The next year at Villarreal, he played much better. That's really probably his big breakout and got him the move to Barcelona, or the move back to Barcelona. Where he actually got some minutes there. I think that he does fit into the Iwobi mold, a wide player that isn't necessarily going to give you the final product, but will link play. And, if you looked at the Cardiff match, I think that's something that Arsenal really need in this squad with the way that Emery wants to play. That was something that when Iwobi came on at halftime, Arsenal just looked so much more balanced in that match. And I think that if Suarez can add that to Arsenal on a consistent basis, I think that things are going to look a little bit more fluid. It just didn't quite fit. I think that was part of the problem, is that Ozil was having to drop back, and then that really only left two attackers. So that 4-4-2 diamond, while I like it, when you're playing three defensive midfielders, it doesn't quite mix right. So I think that having another player who can, if Arsenal do want to stick with that 4-4-2 diamond, I think that Suarez or Iwobi could be one of the three in the midfield to help also alleviate play, bring on more of an attacking if they want to push forward when Arsenal have the ball. So that's what I'm hoping to see from Suarez. I'm not expecting a ton of goals or assists, but I don't think that that's necessarily what Arsenal need. I think they need that link player and someone who can be a little bit more direct and take on players. So hopefully that can be the case. And it's a loan to buy, so there's not a lot of risk here. So yeah, it's okay.
I want to add a sarcastic quip here, but Paul has already asked if he can add, so I'll let Paul add before I bring my pointless sarcastic quips back to the podcast. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, perfect. So just to balance out the Cartledge guy, this guy was a Barca product, played at Sevilla, Villarreal. Everybody got a really good look at him, and Barca went and bought him back. They didn't use him very much, but he also had a lot of competition from some really good guys, and the demands in that particular position are inordinately high at Barcelona. So I think we can say he's not Barcelona standard, but that leaves a lot of, if we were talking about a Barcelona centre-back, you could quibble exactly how world class you're dealing with. But when given the position he was wanting to play, if he's not Barcelona level or Barcelona mentality, or politically didn't really have the mentality to fit in at Barcelona, that still leaves a potentially superb player who's been through their academy, who they knew upwards and downwards when they re-signed him, having sold him. So there's got to be a pretty damn decent player in there between Barcelona owning him twice and Emery wanting him a second time. So we'll see.
I get that. I do think you can overplay the fact that he's at Barcelona. I mean, there are plenty of players that haven't been good at Barcelona because they just weren't that good. In fact, some of them have come from Arsenal. So I think what you have to do is almost disregard the Barcelona thing and go back to what he was at Villarreal, where he was supposedly his best, and say, if that player is what he can be right now, does that player help us right now? And we'll have to find out. I think, Scott, the question for me is sort of how do you ascertain how much a player can help you when it's unclear what way that coach wants the team to play? You know what I mean? I think the reason we're scratching our heads a little bit is not only because we don't know what kind of player is inside Denis Suarez right now, like Cuato, like just bursting out of his stomach. What kind of player is inside him? That's a Total Recall joke if you haven't seen it. But I think it is difficult for us to ascertain the importance or the value of any acquisition in the absence of a primary system of playing. Do you think that's part of the problem? It's hard to visualize for me, I can't visualize what the best case scenario of Suarez is because I don't know what our best case scenario for playing football is right now. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that's kind of part where Arsenal are in a bit of a lurch right here, where we don't have that technical director or the sporting director, whoever is there to kind of set the footballing philosophy for the team. Is it a team that's going to be decided by Unai Emery? Is that who's going to set the philosophy of the team? Because if that's the case, then you really need a director that's going to get the players that he needs. Is going to be the director that comes in, and is he going to want something different? Because that's really where everybody needs to be on the same page, building, everybody pulling on the same way. I think that Suarez is a flexible enough player that he can kind of fit into a number of different roles. But I think that's why everybody was seeing these loan to buy kind of things to keep the options open for the summer, when supposedly a technical director is coming in, so we can have a philosophy to build towards, because that is one of the big questions for Arsenal right now, and I think that's something that is still pretty unclear, along with Emery deciding what our best 11 is, and so it'll be interesting to see. But I don't think this really sets anything in stone, so I think we're good.
I had another hilarious comment to make here, but Paul wants to add again. Go ahead, Paul.
So I have a theory on I accept your premise. It would be great if we had a style and approach, and if we really liked it and we were winning and it worked. Given that none of those things seem to be available to us, maybe the next best thing is basically more of mixed martial arts. Like when I was growing up, I was a big Bruce Lee fan, and he had a very decided style, and even he pulled in moves from other martial arts. That was kind of one of the things he did. He wasn't a purist, but it was still pretty pure. But you look at mixed martial arts, and it's got a bit of everything: wrestling, jiu-jitsu, just straight out punching. Biting his ear when the referee's not looking, whatever it takes. And that's the mode we're in at the moment. And I think given that we literally change formations at half time on a regular basis, Denis Suarez is probably a pretty damn good fit, because he can basically play any attacking midfield or wide role to at least a reasonable level. He's got good speed, he's got trickery, he's got some creativity, and we lack creativity. So I think he's a really good fit for how we play at the moment. You would hope that when the summer comes and he gets a couple more players that he wants in here, Mr. Emery could be more definitive. I mean, he's always a bit of a pragmatist, but more definitive in his go-to style to take it to a smaller team and a larger team. I mean, it was a dramatic change at halftime, and he wasn't happy how we played against Cardiff. And I think Suarez could have played in our first half formation very handily, and maybe he would have stuck with it at that point, or our second half formation. So I think he's going to get plenty of usage out of the boy.
So Elliot, I actually
for fuck's sake, guys, just let me get the pithy comments in here, and then you can talk. All I was going to say is, if we acquire enough players who can carry the ball into the final third without producing anything in that critical aspect of the pitch, we can see the platonic ideal of Emery football. Now you can talk, Scott. Jesus.
All right, so I guess it's kind of piggybacking off of the perfect discussions that we've been having. So I guess the thing is here is, do you see an issue with the halftime changes? Is it something that you think is a problem, or do you see that as Emery just being flexible?
I think it's
Stay
indicative.
in your lane. Jesus Christ, guys! I asked the questions around here. Paul, do you think that halftime changes is a sign of tactical flexibility or a lack of a plan?
Look, it's not a bad thing, but it tells you where we're at, right? The fact that he's decisive. If we'd said, hey, we're going to get this new manager in from Spain, he might be pretty good, and he's going to be flexible in tactics, he's going to be decisive in making changes, even up to formation changes at halftime. He's going to play at 3 at the back. At times, he's going to play 4 at the back. He's going to play with wing backs at other times. And he's going to be decisive on substitutions at halftime and aggressively during the second half. We would say, well, that's going to make a pleasant change. Now, is it good? I think if we were doing well, look, all our problems get fixed when you start winning. And everything looks shit when you're not winning. But that comes back to the fundamental point: why aren't you winning? And there are multiple varied factors. And I don't think changing at halftime is a symptom of the fact that he's not happy with what he's got and what we're doing at the moment, nor should he be. So it means every player is involved, that they know what's going on in the first half. Doesn't mean they're not going to be pulled in the second half. So it's a trade-off. It swings and roundabouts, but it's definitely a measure of where we're at, which is we're not playing close to where the manager wanted to be playing at halftime at Cardiff, nor should he have been happy. And it's good that he was decisive.
Yeah, well, the one thing I will say is that apparently Denis Suarez said, I've spoken to Hector Bellerin. He wrote me a message when the rumors started to come out in the press about me joining Arsenal. If Hector Bellerin wants Denis Suarez at Arsenal, I want Denis Suarez at Arsenal. I will take issue with one thing you said. I mean, everything you said, but just one thing on microphone. Which is everything's good when you're winning. I mean, I think we have at least had questions during some of the winning runs this season about the way we were approaching the games, and I think it's fair to say
there'll always be questions.
Oh, well, and there'll always be hashtag content. But I think, look, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it's a downturn in form that was the first time the questions were raised about what specifically Emery's trying to do. And, look, maybe having a player like Suarez, who he knows a little bit better, who he has a clearly defined role for in his mind, if he does, will help us see a clearer picture of what Emery wants to do more often. And look, maybe it is the case that Emery feels the best way for this Arsenal team to play is different every game because it's such an imbalanced team that there is no one way that's going to work for it. And, until he can build to that, this is what he's got to do. I can live with that. Let's wrap up.
He needs a few more Emery players would be my hope. I'm hoping that's what's holding him back.
I just hope also that Denis Suarez is not the sort of epitome of an Emery player. Not that he can't be, not that he can't be good, but just that, like, let's just say I'm whelmed. You know what I mean? I'm not underwhelmed, but I wouldn't say I'm overwhelmed. Whelmed okay. To work for now. Let's wrap up on the transfer window, though, with a couple of other minor details here. A report coming out, and this is from The Sun, so take it with a grain of salt, or a lot of grains of salt, because, fuck The Sun, but that Emery blocked Nketiah's loan move to Augsburg. So I believe he is not going out. Smith Rowe, I believe, gets his loan move to Red Bull Leipzig. Scott, your thoughts on the one that's happening and the one that's not?
I think that's a good move for him. It's actually a pretty high level, going to RB Leipzig. They're a really good team, in the Bundesliga, which, apparently is where all of our, players are going now. So that'll be a good one. I think that'll be exciting. I wonder if he'll get pretty good amount of minutes in there. So I like that move for him. I wish he could have played more Europa League minutes for Arsenal, but I think that's a good one. I saw that this is a 6 month, but there's also the possibility of it extending into next year. also on a loan. So that'd be a good one to, continue. I guess if he plays well, and then they can continue with him in the plans for next year, and, he could be part of them building to, a key member of the team.
Okay. Paul?
We should buy a Dutch team and start playing our players through their kind of Manchester City style. I think it's great for Smith Rowe. Bummer for Nketiah. I mean, he hasn't really been used here. And he's getting pulled back again. Kept in the squad because Emery thinks he might someday need him. And this time around, it's because he hasn't got his attacking wingers that he was chasing, Carrasco and co. Somebody else who can score goals, and we only have 2 goal scorers. And when you look at the fact that most goals, the highest goals per 90 is scored in the last, 10, 15 minutes of a game by the sub who comes on. We don't have that option off the bench at the moment, the way we're playing. So those last-minute goals, Lacazette was getting them for us for a while. Welbeck used to come on. Aubameyang wouldn't play every game. He'd come on and give us some energy and some goals. That's prime time. You're scoring at almost twice the rate as a player who's staying on for 90 minutes, and we don't have that third option. And maybe Nketiah is the closest we can get, but it's harsh on the lad.
Yeah, I just think this is a season that is proving that anybody who can play effectively in the final third should be retained by the club. And I mean, even ESR, you could make an argument, could be more value to us staying, although I get for his development, this is a great move. I think you could have made an argument for Reece Nelson coming back if that was even allowable. I can't remember if we determined that was or not, but we need those end product players and those players who can make a difference in the final third. So it looks like
had a tendency to send Nketiah out because he's not getting played and keep Smith Rowe because he has the Ramsey knack based on small sample size of getting into the box and getting on the end of the ball getting on the ball in the 6-yard area and daring around and could get us a few goals, I think. As likely as Eddie at the moment because Eddie hasn't played. So I don't know. I might have gone the other way myself if I'd been Senor Emery.
I think
it really just matters on the numbers. Arsenal don't really have a third striker on the team.
Yep, that's how I
with Denis Suarez coming in, that kind of takes more of the minutes that Smith Rowe could have theoretically gotten.
Fair.
I just don't see how we're going to play Aubameyang and Lacazette, start them both in every game between now and the end of the season. Like that's not possible. That is begging. I mean, let me rephrase. Of course, it's possible. It's possible for a frog to jump to the moon, but it's not likely. So, these are things that we should take into consideration. By the way, do not challenge me on the frog jumping to the moon thing. Just leave it. Let's leave the deadline day there. I think, overall, nobody else made any moves that moved the needle. I mean, Scott, is there anything for you that jumps out? Obviously, Higuain had a phenomenal first appearance for Chelsea in their 4-0 drubbing at Bournemouth. I don't believe he took a shot and was replaced by Olivier Giroud. How do you feel about any other moves that the other top 6 made?
Well, in the top 6, there really hasn't been a ton of moves. The one move I was actually kind of interested in is that, big Newcastle United going to Atlanta United, going and plucking the best player out of MLS. So is it the Almiron?
Almiron,
so that was so that would be a
player in MLS.
Are you going to debate on that one? I don't think that one.
No. Sorry, lads.
I think that was a shot at the MLS, which, by the way, I'm totally here for, so that's fine. But yeah, I mean, nothing that moves the needle. Do you think maybe the most important move? It seems like Fellaini is leaving United. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
That worries me.
I think that makes the Everton not giving up on Guerrera or Guerrier. I don't know. The French names are hard for me. But I think that's really throwing the wrench in the Nkunku move that Arsenal wanted to give. Just stay away from me pronouncing names. From PSG. So that one kind of screws things up for Arsenal. But I didn't really expect that one to go through.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one that I think excited me in the sense that, sort of right age profile, an upside opportunity. We were obviously looking at all loans. I will say this. Look.
What was interesting about Nkunku was they said it was one we were looking for the summer that we tried to pull forward and that we're still in there. So hopefully that's a name still floating around in the summertime.
It's Nkunku, isn't it?
Nkunku, yeah.
Okay, not Nkuku, because that
No,
doesn't sound right.
I wouldn't go with that.
No, that's a bird.
That's silly.
Yeah, that is silly. Why'd you say it, Scott? The
Hashtag brand.
Exactly. Look, the way I look at it
brand.
right now is, since we weren't looking at anybody that blows your hair back, the fact that we were looking at loans seems savvy. And I think what we can all agree on with the Denis Suarez thing is, while Paul is certainly more, you'll be shocked to hear, optimistic about this working out for us, we're only committed as far as the rest of this season, and we get a look at him. And just
Not only did Denis Suarez blow my hair back, it parted my pubes.
that's really uncomfortable to hear, and I wish you hadn't said it. First of all, why do you have them? Shave them. Get rid of them.
Okay, I don't get these young people. Nothing wrong with the little bush. That's what I say.
George W? George H.W.?
There's something wrong with that bush.
Okay, there you go. This got really weird really quick. So, all right, well, look, I mean, the upshot here is that we are sitting in fourth place. I mean, the midweek fixtures worked out great for us. The Chelsea result was hilarious. When it was 3-0, someone tweeted out one more goal. I think it might have been LG Ambrose Lewis tweeted out one more goal for Bournemouth, and we're fourth. And I remember laughing it off because it was the 87th minute and it was 3-0 Bournemouth. And sure enough, they got that goal and we move into the top four. And we did it with what is probably not a vintage performance. Now, this is going to be an interesting discussion of the Cardiff match because Paul loved it. It was like his favorite game. He couldn't wait to come on Twitter and say, what a great game it was and so many good performances. And meanwhile, I ran a Twitter poll that was like, who's having less fun, the players or the fans? And it was like 80% the fans with like 1,000 people voting. So I have a feeling this could be a slightly polarizing conversation, but let's do this. The mention of pubes has got me all fired up. So I want to give a shout out to our friends at The Enclosed. Let's take a break. Let's talk about lingerie. We'll try to purge the thought of Paul's privates from our mind. And when we come back, we will talk about the disgusting/classic performance that was Arsenal beating Cardiff in midweek. So we'll take a break, hear about lingerie, come back after this. Okay, everyone, it's time to tell you about our friends at Enclosed Lingerie. You can find them online at The Enclosed, ENCLOSED.com. Enclosed Lingerie is a lingerie of the month club. That's right, just like a beer of the month club, only better, because it's a high-end luxury lingerie gift for you and your partner that's going to enhance the intimacy in your relationship. Right now, if you put in Arsenal at checkout, they're going to give you $35 off any gift from Enclosed Lingerie. So you're going to want to go to theenclosed.com and sign up now. Look, Valentine's Day is around the corner. What better way to celebrate the romance in your relationship than celebrating Valentine's Day with a gift from The Enclosed? And the gifts keep coming every month. So while it can be difficult to remember to keep the romance, to keep the intimacy in your relationship, The Enclosed has your back. Every month you're going to get that high-end luxury lingerie gift, and it's going to remind you of the importance of romance in your relationship. So do it now. Go to theenclosed.com. There is a perfect fit guarantee, so you never have to worry about the fit. It's beautiful high-end luxury lingerie. Just go to theenclosed.com and enter promo code ARSENAL for $35 off at checkout. Do it now. And we're back. Hope that got you in the mood for a little sexy Arsenal Cardiff talk. And Scott, I will start with you. I didn't find this to be a vintage performance myself personally. Just 30,000-foot view before we get granular, because I know what's coming with Paul. Did you enjoy this one, or did you think this was a grind?
It was definitely a grind.
Thank you.
I think that's exactly how Cardiff wanted it, and it's exactly how it turned out. I probably could have gone and wished to have those 90 minutes of my life back, but instead I spent them watching Arsenal. Yeah,
okay, that sums it up. As far as the setup, it was one of those things that right from the minute the lineup came out, Twitter handled it with the equanimity it's known for. No, I'm kidding. Everybody lost their shit. Really, really strange, because I totally understand that some of these players need rest and need time out of the side. So a guy like Granit Xhaka, who plays a lot of minutes, getting him rest makes sense. I just not sure the way we set up that it made sense. Now, when I looked at it, I assumed that it would be a diamond. It did look like it was going to be that way, but El Neni at the base of it, kind of worried me in terms of how we were going to progress the ball. Yeah, Guendouzi in midfield, and we can talk about him a little more because I thought he had an interesting performance. Mesut Ozil starts and gets the captaincy. I didn't know what to make of this lineup when I saw it. And, the back four was as makeshift as we expected. I mean, do you think that he's just continuing to show that he's willing to go a little too conservative in games like this?
Yeah,
Scott.
I think it was definitely a quite a conservative one. I don't understand this need for only putting three attacking, truly attacking players on the pitch against these bottom table teams, especially at home. I mean, almost anybody could see that they were going to sit back and they were going to, let Arsenal have the ball. And it was with three, nominal, defensive midfielders. I guess Guendouzi is more of a, box-to-box player now. And, Torreira is pretty good going forward. But that's not really what you're going to get from El Neni. And, like I said in my Buying the Numbers piece, I don't want to shit all over El Neni because, I think he's a useful player. But he's not really a player that, you come in and, expect to see, great offensive, creativity from. He's a player that does pretty decent defensive work, passes the ball pretty well, safely. Will take a shot from too far out and will more often than not get it blocked. But that doesn't really excite you. And when you put him with two other players that aren't going to be, dynamic attacking players from deep, it really, really blunts an attack. Especially when Arsenal struggled so much to connect the ball. It's not even that Cardiff were really challenging the midfield in that match. They still just couldn't get the ball forward to the attacking players. And it really caused Ozil to really drop back too much. And then that had Lacazette coming back, and then it was really Aubameyang all by himself. The only time we really seemed to have any thrust was through Kolasinac on the left, and it makes us very one-dimensional. And it wasn't until Iwobi came on that things looked right. And I think that that's going to be on the manager. That almost anybody could have seen that and predicted it. And I think that was a mistake from him from the beginning.
Yeah, it's hard for me to disagree. I mean, you don't want to get too far out over your ski tips being doomy and dispiriting over a win in a week when none of the other top six teams took all 3 points. But certainly it looked like a conservative setup and we struggled to create. But the thing that's so disappointing for me, Paul, was with a conservative setup like that against Cardiff at home, at least you expect, okay, well, maybe we take the one or two chances we get, but they're not going to create much. And the opposite was true. They carved us open quite a bit, and Emery himself admitted that if anyone should have been ahead at halftime, it should have been them. I mean, if you want to set aside for a moment the challenges we had building play, which continue to be persistent is another way of just saying persist. Do you think that our openness and inability to deny them, the chances to cut us open, was the bigger concern of that game?
The bigger concern. Well, no, I think the biggest concern is still our lack of creativity, because we created some chances and didn't capitalize on them. The referee was not helping on the penalty side of things, but we eventually forced him into one.
That's fair.
Yeah, third time of asking. I mean, they just hacked Guendouzi down all over the pitch, and he wasn't the only one.
I think he's the most fouled, or one of the three most fouled players in the league. Scott, you might have this in front of you. I think there are two other players that are more fouled than him, but they've played between 300 and 500 minutes more than him. Is that right?
I can look it up while you continue on.
All right. Fire away, Paul. No idea what Scott's doing over there with his database.
Yeah, and, defensively in this one, you got to look at the midfield. I don't understand not playing Torreira at the base of the diamond. I mean, I kind of get it because he wanted to play El Neni, and he sees El Neni as a kind of a solid, dependable player who can do a bit of everything. But, man, play Torreira at the base of the spine of the diamond so that we can start playing with some creativity at the back, because I think he's got more game and he's got a more aggressive line of passing. So I don't really understand the lineup choices. I'd have played Torreira at the base, Guendouzi on the right hand side, and El Neni if that's the only option available. And we've seen him play some reasonable games as a more attacking midfielder, pushed a little higher. So I didn't really get that. I thought Ozil got a lot of stick. So I think I
don't understand that. Why do you think he got stick? Because look, it was a poor performance. I thought he and Guendouzi were really the bright spots for large periods of it.
Him, Guendouzi, and Lacazette. I thought Lacazette has been almost outstanding for 2 games, and this was screw his goal. I had already decided he was lighting the place up. And it's not all the eye-catching stuff. I just thought he'd really good game. So I didn't think we played brilliantly. And I know I said something about creating a lot of chances. I think we created enough chances going forward had we done more with them and a little bit of support from the ref. But I thought Lacazette was outstanding. I thought Ozil was really good and really added and created and did a lot to build play. If you just watch him playing his game, he had more. People think he wasn't that busy. He had more passes than Guendouzi, who was a very busy player in this game for as long as Guendouzi was on the pitch. He was dropping deep. He was all over the place, and he reminded me why I love his style of play and the way he played. So, I think what I'd revise my message on this as being, I think individual players played pretty well. The system didn't particularly work. We had some really nice passages of play that we didn't capitalize on. Some of those didn't show up in XG because there are balls across the box. We should have scored on 90 seconds with that one that came in, the Guendouzi ball through to Kolasinac, who squares it across the box and it falls to Lacazette and he doesn't quite get it off quick enough. So I enjoyed a lot of the aspects of this game by looking at the individual players more than the structure, the way we were playing, the kind of ebb and flow of the game. It breaks my heart to see Ozil going to waste. I kind of understand it, but he's just such a beautiful player when he's at it, and he was at it in this game, I thought. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah,
we changed it at halftime for a reason. It wasn't working particularly well. That didn't mean there weren't a few small golden nuggets in the first half and some players playing their socks off.
I think we had to change it because we weren't creating enough to overcome what was, I thought, a dangerous Cardiff side. And just looking at the basics of it, Cardiff had, 15 shots or something? 19 shots. And I realize, look, XG is more important, but 19 shots is a lot to allow. At the end of the day, the variance that goes with 19 shots is you can wind up conceding a couple times. Now, as it turns out, they got a late goal to make it maybe slightly kind of interesting. I also thought that our attacking performance was varnished by the period of play after we got the penalty, because then some chances came. We had the one big chance with Aubameyang, and I think, Scott, am I correct in saying that our XG for the match was padded pretty considerably by what happened after the penalty?
Yeah, so Arsenal had a total of 4 big chances in the match, but 2 of them came after the 90th minute, so that was, definitely... 2
of them came after the 90th minute.
Yeah, that's right. So there was,
Okay, yeah, that kind of tells you everything. I do think Guendouzi was excellent. He led us in passing, but it wasn't just that. 5 of 6 completed in the penalty area. He's a really interesting player because he can break lines and he can be good at deep distribution, and he's active and he's busy, but I think he has a real flair for picking a pass in the penalty area. Was it Lacazette he picked out really nicely on the right channel inside the penalty area for a really good opportunity. I like his ability to keep his head up and spot movement and play people in around the area. And I'd almost like to see him maybe deployed as another attacking option. Maybe he could play one of those tucked in wide positions, sort of inverted winger positions. I realize that doesn't give us a lot of pace or dribbling, but we don't have a ton of it with any of the options we have at the moment. But Scott, one of the stories of the game, unfortunately, I think, is Lichtsteiner's performance. Maitland-Niles not great against United. Apparently had a knee injury, left out of this squad. And so we went to Lichtsteiner. This is what he was brought in for when Bellerin's not around. You haven't had a good day when you're chasing the game and it's a straight swap for Carl Jenkinson. How do you feel about Lichtsteiner?
Yeah, purely tactical one, too.
Yeah,
and there's no...
it wasn't like change the system. It's like, here's a not good right back to come on for our worst right back. That's scary when you're chasing a game and that's one of your 3 substitutes. Do you think maybe people are piling on too hard, or was this really, really poor performance for you from Lichtsteiner?
Yeah, it's sad to see because, Lichtsteiner, especially with all the years that he had at Juventus, was a really good player. But I think that you're seeing just, the age that comes for us all. Eventually, you can no longer do the athletic parts of the game anymore. And especially in Emery's system, you need to be athletic to be able to play fullback because he expects a lot of going up and down, especially when Arsenal play with that diamond. There's no width from any of the attackers. It's all going to come from the fullbacks. And I think that you could just see that Lichtsteiner just didn't have it in him anymore. So I guess we're ready for Jenkinson time. So
do you think that's going to happen? I mean, or do you think maybe potentially? I mean, certainly for City we might go to a back three, but put the City game aside because I think it's an anomaly in some ways. I mean, if you're Emery, how do you solve a position where it's either an old bad player or a young bad player?
I guess go for the more athletic young bad player. I think Jenkinson, his biggest downfall for me is that he's not the greatest defender. I think he's a pretty good, he has a pretty good delivery on his crosses. He seems to have some athleticism still in him, so he can, move around a lot and be active. Again, we're talking about a player that struggled to make it in the championship last year, and so we're not talking the highest quality player. But that's what Arsenal are left with right now. So I think that I am done with Lichtsteiner and I'm ready to move on. I still think that we should give Maitland-Niles more chance, if that knee injury heals.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the direction I'd prefer we go. And again, I don't think Maitland-Niles is a fullback, but I think given the sort of choice that we're stuck with right now, I'd still prefer we persist with him and give him a chance to develop some skills there. Paul, the Lichtsteiner thing wasn't great, but I don't think anyone's expecting miracles from him. So that sort of is what it is. I mean, do you kind of concur that Maitland-Niles is still the best option at that position?
I think so. I don't think mentally he's really tuned into playing there, but he's probably the best we have. And when you look at the manager's utterances, he seems to list Maitland-Niles first when he talks about that position in terms of options. He's been bigging up Carl Jenkinson a little bit as a valid option, and we finally saw him coming on and playing a role there. So we could well see more of Corporal Jenks as the season goes on, which one side of me loves and the other side wants to protect him and us from each other. So
you don't want to see the poor Arsenal lad get beat up by angry fans. No, I follow you.
Or us getting beaten up by some travesty of decision making.
Yeah, fair enough. Look, yeah. I have a take that I don't know that will be popular because of the way the game went, but that's nothing unusual for me. So I'm going to just throw it out there for you and see what you think. This wasn't a vintage performance, but in the first half, for as open as we were, I thought we had some dangerous-looking moves. Once again, Kolasinac is basically our Mesut Ozil in the Emery system. Fine, so be it. But I actually thought we got worse in the second half before the penalty. I think the 4-2-3-1 is just an abomination. Aubameyang has no idea what to do with the ball in the middle third. You get him the ball in transition 30, 40 yards from goal, and he has no clue. And you can see people starting to get frustrated with him. And I can understand it because he's just not suited for that. He is not very good with the ball at his feet. He is not a good intermediate range passer. He's clever around the box, both on the end of moves and creating moves, but he doesn't want to run with the ball at his feet in transition, and he certainly is not going to be part of the buildup. So I think he looked really, really out of place there. I thought we stagnated badly. Iwobi could not get on the ball to save his life. Now, once the penalty happened, it all changes because Cardiff had to come out and they had to attack, and we started to have a lot more opportunities. But, Paul, as far as that period from halftime until we got the penalty, I thought it was pretty bad. I mean, do you disagree? Do you think that it was a positive change?
No, I think that's right. I mean, Aubameyang can't dribble and can't pass. He's an eye for a big pass, but the tiki-taka stuff, the connecting it's just not his ball game. And without a creative player to get the ball in behind, and with Cardiff sitting so deep, it just didn't seem to make a lot of sense, as you say, until they had to come out and get at us. And yeah, Iwobi was strikingly quiet when he came on. There's no real good explanation for that. It wasn't his fault, but we just weren't playing in a way to get him on the ball and to have an impact there. So it was kind of a stultifying. It moved Guendouzi back, who I thought prior to that point had been one of our most dynamic final third players, or edge of the final third kind of players. Yep. Yeah, I mean, he's a nomad. He's a wanderer. I mean, he needs to be able to travel all over the pitch, but that creates issues, especially for poor little Torreira, who's really good at knowing where to be, but he can't cover it all. So it's kind of, I think we see this as a pairing that will take forward into future seasons, etc. They should both be players the manager loves. But man, that's a lot of ground to cover for the second central midfielder along Guendouzi, because he's best when he's he's getting fouled all over the place because he's traveling all over the place. He doesn't get that many dribbles off, and I think half the time it's because he's cut down in his prime by all the fouling that goes on. He's actually a pretty decent dribbler, at least past the first player he meets. But yeah, it was an interesting start to the second half. Like you say, it didn't really fix our problems until we got that goal, and there was a lot of frustration. And it was in a way, the penalty kind of came out of the blue. But thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll take it. And to be fair, I mean, we could have had penalties on other occasions. We're going to say goodbye to Scott. He has to jump off for emergency work-related reasons, which is totally unacceptable. But when you record a podcast in the middle of the workday, sometimes that happens. That lingerie money can't support all of us. In any event, Paul, I think... the one thing that...
you're back to me, are you?
Yeah, unfortunately. This is going to get interesting real fast. Let's try not to fight. I think one of the things that I just look at is we want to keep both Lacazette and Aubameyang on the pitch, and I totally understand why we want to do that. They're really the only two reliable goal scorers we have in the squad. But the trying to play with one chance creator in the middle of the pitch, one build-up player, and using the fullbacks for width, I think it's not only choking off our buildup, our attacking buildup, especially through the middle, but it's also meaning that we're just so much more vulnerable to counterattacks because the fullbacks are just so involved in the attacking play, in the possession play, and against these smaller teams that sit deep, those fullbacks get sucked forward and we get hit on the counter. We saw similar stuff with actually Arsene Wenger's Arsenal just a few seasons ago. I mean, could you be talked into the idea that we just start playing one striker and go to more of a 4-3-3. And even though we don't have true wingers, maybe it's when Mkhitaryan's back, Iwobi and Mkhitaryan, or maybe it's Ramsey and Ozil in the wide positions, or Ramsey and Iwobi, whatever it is. And then you have the three midfielders. You play a Torreira, a Xhaka, and a Guendouzi in midfield. A little more central control, a little more progressive passing with, Xhaka and Guendouzi, where Guendouzi can maybe get a little more forward. I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of thinking out loud here, but it denies you that. Now, I guess you could play Aubameyang as one of those wide forwards, even though I don't know that it suits him. But do we have to find a way, even if it means only putting one of the two strikers out there, to get another build-up / attacking type player on the pitch that's not just going to get on the end of moves?
Look, you would not build a team with the plan to play Aubameyang on the wing. I know he did that at Dortmund in his early days.
Yeah,
but you don't do that. Not the way we play. Not given we'll often have too much possession for that, and given our propensity to go down a goal early on against other teams, it's not ideal. He doesn't bring us. I know he gets his goals and he gets his tap-ins, but beyond that, he makes no sense as an additional forward if we're not playing a pressing game. Then he makes a whole bunch of sense. If you got Lacazette and Aubameyang split by Ramsey, and what we're doing is we're pushing we're pressing and pushing against their back line, and we're putting the high press on, and we're going after their keeper. Play both of them. So there are games when you can play both, but you've got to use them as a pressing line, or it's nuts. The problem for Emery and for me right now is that Lacazette has been superb pretty much for most of the season, but as far back as I can think of, he's having a hell of a season. He's really coming into top class form. So it's really hard to drop the guy. Aubameyang's our world class finisher. He's the guy I would have said played through the middle. I'm certainly all in favor of alternating the strikers, but that's very tricky for a manager, for player and squad management. But you also need somebody to come off the bench and score goals. And I'd sit the guys down and say, listen, we got 4 months to go. We're going to have to come to agreement between you two boys for the sake of the team, so that we can get into top four. And we're going to have to do a little rotation between you two. And sometimes you'll come on at 70 minutes. Sometimes you'll come on, Pierre, at 70 minutes. Sometimes we'll play the two of you when we want to press and find some kind of accommodation, because I think it's really difficult to get our attacking unit sorted when your givens are Lacazette and Aubameyang, whether it's a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2. Which
someone's got to be sacrificed to play them both, and it's winding up being a player who can create chances, a player who can cut open the defense a little more. And I think the problem is Aubameyang wants to get on the end of moves. There's only one player supplying the ball on the pitch at any given time right now. I mean, it's cutbacks from the fullbacks too, but really it was Ozil on this day, and Guendouzi, I guess, was doing it a little bit. Sure. I just think we're missing that one extra player, and maybe it's entirely because of Mkhitaryan's absence that the manager feels he doesn't have another player who adds enough to make it worthwhile playing only one.
Mkhitaryan and Suarez, it's going to create a counter pressure to get those guys into the team too. So maybe it'll begin to resolve itself. Maybe the options just weren't there with Aubameyang for this game to do something a bit different with, say, Ramsey over to in his spot, because Ramsey was clapped out after the United game, I would have said. But maybe. Yeah.
I mean, to me, if you said I can get Ramsey on the pitch, I can get Ozil on the pitch, I can get Mkhitaryan on the pitch, and I can get one of Lacazette or Aubameyang on the pitch, I'd rather do that at this point, I think. Or maybe the names change up a little bit. Maybe it's Denis Suarez and Ozil and Mkhitaryan, or maybe it's Denis Suarez, Ramsey, and Ozil. But I think you need that extra player in the final third to cut open defenses. And, Aubameyang is just so peripheral right now. Look, Lacazette is a wrecking ball in the box right now. He is extraordinary, and he's pressing back and he's tackling. I think his link-up play is overstated. He is not Robin van Persie. He is not putting Aubameyang in, running in behind the defenses. We are not creating anything through the center of the pitch. And I realize not a lot is created through the center of the pitch. It's the hardest place to do it. But we really have become, a one-trick pony with the overlaps on the left wing. And I think
and no goals off the bench. And no striker.
No striker on the bench either. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it may just be a case of, especially for a manager who makes changes every halftime and uses his subs early, you want someone who comes on. I mean, as much as I love Aubameyang, and God knows I love Aubameyang, a fresh Aubameyang coming on 50 minutes into the match, to pose a different challenge to fading legs, like that may not be such a bad thing. I don't know. I just think we have to find another route to goal, and it may mean, ironically, sacrificing a striker. Do
you think we'll keep both strikers this summer?
I don't see how we couldn't, because, first of all, strikers are so expensive. I don't think you can afford to have one striker at the club. And we don't have anyone who can be the heir apparent. I mean, whatever you think of Nketiah, he's not ready to be the number 2 striker at the club.
No.
We're not going to go out. I mean, what are we going to do? Are we going to sell Aubameyang for what do you get for him at this age, at this point, on his wages, $25 million? 30
No, I think you get a lot. I think you probably get what we bought him for.
All right, but then you're going to turn around and buy what? You're not going to be able to buy another striker of his caliber with that money. I mean, you're going to buy a prospect. I get it, but I just think...
Well, you could have a Mislintat kind of 23-year-old.
Well, we can't have a Mislintat anything because he's fucked off somewhere else. But
I'm just trying to think through, does the manager look at it and say, knowing that one of the boys has to go in the summer, that he's okay with a little ruffling a few feathers for the next 4 months to get us into the Champions League?
See,
he's got to do what he's got to do anyway.
And the reason, again, the most important commodity in all of football is goals. It's the most important thing. And it is the hardest thing to find. And when you have proven goals, I mean, whatever we think of Aubameyang, he's the fastest to whatever number of goals he scored of any Arsenal player in the Premier League era. And, he's won off, again, the Premier League lead. And that's without, I think, being brilliant. But he does get on the end of chances. Finishing is variable. He's arguably going to, potentially round back into finishing form and revert to the mean and have a really strong finish to the season. I just think if you have goals in the squad, selling them off to try to go buy them again doesn't make sense to me when there are other areas of need that we can address. I think there's a bigger chance that we try to shift Ozil and bring in another playmaker or a winger.
For sure.
That's what we need. To me, we need our Sadio Mane, Sané, Sterling, that kind of player, right? Mahrez.
That ilk of player.
Yeah, that type of profile. Yeah, and we've debated that before. You gave Lacazette some credit, but let's just specifically real quick touch on the goal. I mean, it's really well taken. And the thing I will say about him, when he reminds me of Podolski in one way, which is just like once he gets it onto his strong foot in the box, he strikes the ball beautifully.
He fucking lurried it. He lurried it.
Yeah. What do you think of just, just sort of the accuracy and the power of his shooting? He's a very adept shooter at getting the ball on target with power.
He is. He's technically lovely. That was an angry goal right from the get-go.
He wanted a goal all game. Yeah, he was just like, fuck it, I'm getting a goal. Yeah.
Fuck you. Fuck the guys who've been kicking me all over the place. Fuck you, ref. I'll do it myself. Give me that damn whistle. I won't need it. And he just fucking beeline into the box and fucking lurries it past the keeper. It was delicious.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, look, you never want to give a player too much credit for penalties, but I do like the way Aubameyang takes it because he just never looks at the ball. Mm-hmm. He just watches the keeper, lets him go. I love that. If you have the wherewithal to do that, to wait until the last minute and let the keeper move first, it's the most surefire way, I would think, of scoring a penalty, and it takes a lot of confidence and composure. So, I thought that was great. So overall, I mean, look, it is a big result that we had to get going into a very, very tricky game. I think we're going to have to write the City game off. I think the hard part here is we will have special tactics, as we always seem to for the big games, just for City. They may work, they may not, but I don't think they're necessarily indicative of what we're going to try to do going forward. What are some of your final takeaways from the Cardiff game? I mean, for you overall, is this a case of, on a week when none of the other top six took full points, we should maybe give the team a little bit of credit for getting it done?
Yeah, I do. Look, you look at any of the individual performances and everybody was at it. It may not have worked in terms of formation, but what I particularly enjoyed was despite the kicking, despite the shit refereeing, everybody was on it, including Ozil. And as we mentioned, Lacazette, Guendouzi stood out. And when you look at the blandness of some of the other games we watched, that lull they all hit, it gives it a little bit of a veneer, as somebody mentioned earlier, when you look at it in the context of the other two games at a time where after the busy Christmas period, it's pretty easy to flatline for a while. And so, hey, you take your 3 points, which is the only thing that really matters. We were 2-0 up and cruising for a while. Shame about the clean sheet. But eventually we kicked in and we looked like we were a bit of class. So it gives us a fill-up for the City game. And as you say, maybe we'll go at them with some pressing. And I could see us having a good 70 or so minutes. I don't think we'll make it across the finish line. But City might have some questions for themselves at the moment. I know the situation right now is probably they're planning to bounce back, and they probably will, but they'll also have some questions if we can stick it to them, and some nervousness about the whole Liverpool situation. So it could be more interesting than we might have otherwise suspected. Could be a game, and we've done well when we've gone at teams. Even the City and Chelsea game at the start of the season gave us some level of hope that we could get stuck in there. So we're a better team now. Maybe we can give them some grief with the pressing lineup.
Yeah, I kind of want to approach the City game just as
write it off.
Well, yeah, just as sort of like an interesting thought experiment almost, like see what Emery comes up with.
That's a mentally healthy state to as a supporter. Well, but as a team, why not go for, City are not in the best spot at the moment. Now, they may respond brilliantly, but they may not.
There's the challenge for me, the thing that scares me is still just the number of chances we concede. And, it's not that I think City are unbeatable. It's that I think City are a particularly terrifying attacking force, and we are sort of a paper-thin defensive squad, like tissue paper thin. So,
any chance we'll go with three at the back?
It's always easier to do that when you have three defenders you can pick to go three at the back. It looks like Koscielny's back in training. I mean, I think some of that's going to depend on how he feels, because I don't think you want to put a tentative Koscielny out there if he's worried about his face falling off. Mustafi being one central defender next to someone like Monreal scares me shitless. I think three at the back certainly sounds like a safer plan, but we've seen three at the back be just as vulnerable for Arsenal this season. I mean, what we did against Chelsea, where we went 4-2 and pressed, that worked really well. I don't think you can do that against City. I think Chelsea are a different animal in that respect. So I don't know. I mean, this is one of those cases where I just have to tip my hat to Emery. I don't know if you saw the picture of him going around on social media today, but he looked like he'd slept at a bus stop all night. And someone tweeted out, and I apologize for not getting it correct who it was, but that's how you look after 72 hours straight of studying Manchester City film. And that's basically it. I mean, it's going to give him nightmares, but hopefully he comes up with something interesting. Anything would be a pleasant surprise. I think the important thing is, what we do in the wake of this game. And with the Europa League coming back, it's on Emery now to balance the squad. I mean, in a way, you could almost say it would have helped Emery if we were like 12 points cut adrift of fourth. You know what I mean? Where he could just be like, okay, Europa League's my everything. But he's in that position right now where he's going to have to really get the balance right, because we are very much in the top four battle now and still very much in the Europa League battle. So at least he's got two fronts where he could get Champions League. And I think the reluctance to spend in this window is also a little bit of maybe a look ahead to the summer, saying, the caliber of player and the amount of money we can spend is so different if we get into the Champions League that let's see if we can get there, rather than sort of committing ourselves to Europa League caliber. So it'll be interesting. Do you think Suarez will play in this game?
No, I think he might come off the bench, depending on whether it's going well. If it's going not very well, I think he might come off the bench. I don't think we should make Manchester City his problem, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's fair. My opinion personally is that he should start against Manchester City, and if he's unable to drag us to victory, we'll know everything we need to know about that loan move. So that's where I come down on that. Score prediction?
Yes, there will be. 3-1 to them.
3-1 to them. I will say, 4-2 to them. I think we can, and I know they
That sounds like a great game.
It does sound like a great game.
For the neutral.
Yeah, but we hate the neutral.
Fucking hate neutrals.
See. I mean,
flip-floppers.
How are you feeling? I mean, real quick before we say goodbye, you starting to maybe develop a little sense that we could do this and finish top four? I mean, I think Chelsea could be in deep shit, and United might wind up being the challenger we have to worry about.
Yeah. So I think that's a good summary. I'm feeling more optimistic because I'd almost begun to write it off until there's been a few good results for us from other teams in the last 2 game weeks. So they brought us right back into it. The question is, can we hold off United? I really do think that's the question. But they had a nice stumble, wasn't it, against Burnley? So
home to Burnley is not a game you're supposed to drop points. So, I mean, it would have been nice if they had lost, but a draw is still terrible for that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we shall see. Well, I have to admit, relatively upbeat about things. I'm excited to see what Suarez can do. Ultimately, I think it is a shame that right when we climb back into the top four and maybe have things pointing in the right direction kind of unexpectedly, we have such a tough game coming up. But, if we don't put all our eggs in this basket and just sort of approach it as a curiosity, maybe that's the best thing to do. In any event, we'll see how it goes. We'll be back with a podcast after that. We're going to do a Patreon podcast tomorrow, actually. So Friday, day after deadline day, go over the transfer window, talk more about Suarez, cover a couple other things that we have planned. So if you haven't signed up for our Patreon yet, you can do that, and we would love you. And if you are not signing up for our Patreon, we still love you. And if you've already signed up, we love you. So we love all of you regardless, and we appreciate you listening to us. Tim will be back after the City game. Clive will be back for the Patreon pod. Scott may never be back if he just got fired from his job. Who knows? He may be found wandering the streets of San Francisco. Still better, though, than wandering the streets where I live, where it is 4 million degrees below zero. In any event, Paul's on Twitter at Pause in My Pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Give us a 5-star review. Write nasty things about Tim. Lots of nasty things. We've built up quite a debt of nasty things that need to be said about Tim. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Manchester City 0.